First, I'll introduce the speakers, and then I'll run through the webinar agenda and give a little background. We have with us this evening member leader from UFCW Local 770, Michael Bott. He is a Vons worker. We also have member leader from UFCW 3000, Sam Dancy, who's with QFC. We'll hear from John Marshall, who's an advisor to the president of Local 324 and the Capital Strategies Director for Local 3000. And the other presidents and delegates from Locals 5, 7, 770, and 3000 are also here with us tonight and will join us during the Q&A session. This webinar is one of many member education and update opportunities that we've held over the last year and a half since this proposed merger was first announced, and our coalition of UFCW 5, 324, and 770 from California, Local 3000 in Washington, and parts of Idaho and Oregon, and Local 7 from Colorado and Wyoming, as well as Local 400 from the Washington, D.C. area and many of the surrounding states, formed together to stop the merger. Altogether, our collective unions, locals, represent over 100,000 union grocery store members from Kroger and Albertsons. Since October of 2022, when this proposed merger was announced, our coalition has held dozens of events like this: press conferences, actions at stores, and other member meetings. We have helped generate hundreds of TV, radio, and newspaper stories, reaching millions of people on this topic. We have met directly with federal and state regulators. We have recently met directly with Kroger and Albertsons executives, as well as executives from C&S wholesalers. And we have helped build a national coalition, NoGroceryMerger.com, to coordinate the opposition, generate thousands of signatures and petitions to the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, and more. This evening, we will hear from UFCW Local 770 member Michael Bott and UFCW Local 3000 member Sam Dancy, and then get a presentation from our financial analyst, John Marshall. And then finally, we will open it to Q&A from all of you at the end. If you have questions during the presentation, we urge you to put them into the chat or the Q&A feature, or you can raise your hand, and following the presentations, we'll answer as many of the questions as we possibly can. Please write what local you're with when you write your question. It'd be helpful in terms of answering it. So with that, I'm very, very excited to pass this on to Michael to talk about his experience. Michael, go ahead.
Hi guys, good evening everybody. I was invited by my local, sorry, my dog decided to start barking. I got invited to go to the meeting between C&S and the unions. And I've been on the bargaining committee with the master food contract, and it was very similar to that, where we're all sitting around the table, C&S on one side, us on the other. We got to answer questions for them. They got to answer questions for us, and they kept talking about how smoothly they wanted this transition to go if it got approved by the FTC. They kept saying it back and forth, like, it'll be easy. We have management coming over. We have this, we have everything. And I believe what they were saying. But the problem is I took my opportunity and I talked to them and I said, I've been in the business 34 years. I run my produce department. There's not many people that can do that. And if I leave and go back to Vons or Kroger or whatever, the original company, you won't have anybody to run your stores. And they were very surprised by that. I felt that they didn't realize that we have the option of staying with our parent company. You have 7 days, as of the rules are right now, that when they announce it, we can say we want to stay or we want to go with the new company. They seem very surprised by that. And they asked more questions about it. Even after the meeting was over, the lady that Kathy, I forget her last name, was came over and asked me more questions about the staying or going. And I said, I believe what you're selling, but I don't think you can do it because you won't have employees, the lifeblood of your company, regular people like you and me, work doing the work. You can have all the bosses you need, but we need us. So I told him, I said, I can't take that chance. So everybody out there, you have that option of staying with your company. You don't have to go to the new company. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much, Michael. And now let's hear from Sam Dancy from Local 3000.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Sam Dancy. I have worked for over 30 years at QFC store in West Seattle. I'm a member of UFCW 3000. Like you, I work hard at my job. Our employers depend on our labor and our customers' purchases to make these profits. While when a company like Kroger or Albertsons tell you how their proposed merger is going to be good for you and your jobs and lower prices for our customers, I don't believe them. I am glad to be part of our coalition at UFCW's, telling regulators and the public why we oppose this merger. I, along with dozens of other UFC members, spoke with the chair at the FTC in Colorado late last year. I'm proud to know that my Attorney General of Washington State, Bob Ferguson, filed a lawsuit last week challenging the proposed merger and divestitures of stores for C&S Wholesale. While we are all just a bunch of grocery store workers, we are showing that when we work together and fight hard and find out the truth, we can take on some of the biggest corporations in America. These companies have many problems they should be fixing instead of spending time and money on a proposed merger that is a bad idea. For example, this last year, workers at Kroger across the nation were missing payroll or paid incorrectly. This went on for months and months. That's not right. Another thing, in many stores, workers and customers don't feel safe. We need more security. A third example, our understaffed stores are impacting workers and our customers. Instead of cutting hours, we need higher pay, better training, more security, and more staff hired. If mergers like this one were going to solve these problems, my store would not have these problems. 27 years ago, a company called Fred Meyer from Portland, Oregon, bought QFC. A year later, Kroger bought Fred Meyer. That's how I became a Kroger employee. So I have seen plenty of mergers and they have not solved our problems. Things have gotten worse. While Kroger keeps saying how much they care about workers and customers, they charge higher and higher prices, understaffed stores, and underpay employees. In my opinion, these companies will stop at nothing to make an extra dollar profit. They are not looking out for me or you or our customers. We need to have each other's back and be looking out for ourselves together. I'm very honored to be a Union Grocery Store member like all of you and want us to keep fighting this bad merger idea to the very end. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you, Sam. And again, I just want to reiterate that during the presentation, you can continue to put your questions in the Q&A or the chat, and we'll have an opportunity at the end to answer them all, but you don't need to wait till the end to include your questions. We now have the privilege of hearing from John Marshall to really give us a thorough look at both what's going on with the merger and the company's opportunities. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Andrea, and thanks as well to Sam and Michael. I really appreciated your comments. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see my slides here. Just give me 1 second and get that going. Great. So it is a true honor to be with everybody tonight. There are some very important recent developments I would like to give you an update on. And then I'm also very excited to participate in the Q&A and discussion after my presentation. Let me jump right into the agenda. I'm going to give a few words on the current status of the Federal Trade Commission's investigation, and then the big news from last week, the Washington State Attorney General's lawsuit to block the merger. I will provide a little update on the company meetings that were referenced earlier and the new timeline that the company has put out. And I want to spend a little bit of time talking about this proposed sale of stores to CNS Wholesale. It's become a very important aspect of the merger proposal right now, and it's critical that we understand what's going on in that category. Then I want to spend most of the remainder of my time talking about what a different path would look like. If instead of this merger, the companies decided to invest the billions of dollars they want to spend on that into the stores in the form of staffing and fixing broken equipment and making the stores better places to work and better places to shop. And then we'll have the Q&A. So over the past year, or a little bit more than a year, most of the work we've been doing with the FTC and the state attorneys general has been communicating directly at the staff level with the attorneys working on the cases and our staff at the local unions doing the communicating. Over the past several months, the priority has really been to let members, you on this call, be the ones communicating directly with these regulators. So we've had a number of listening sessions. This announcement is from one in November that we organized with FTC Chair Lena Khan and Colorado Attorney General Phil Weiser. Extremely successful listening session that I believe Sam Dancy referred to a minute ago. I also want to talk about the communications and media work that we've done and really give a shout out to all of the communication staff from the coalition unions. I think we've done an excellent job at making sure that members' voices are in the discussion in the news coverage of this merger, both through op-eds like this one, as well as in the mainstream coverage, making sure that your voices are represented loudly and clearly. I want to be very clear that this fight is nowhere near over, but I think it is fair to say that we have been winning the media war. We have connected the issue of the impact on workers to the impact on consumers in the form of higher food prices, and that is a powerful combination. I think the most concrete evidence of the success that we've been having with that is what I referred to a minute ago. Last week, on January 15th, the Washington State Attorney General, Bob Ferguson, filed suit in the State Superior Court of Washington to block this merger. This is an important event, obviously, but we don't think it's the last of the regulatory actions that are going to be taken to block this merger. I want to talk a little bit about what the lawsuit says. I've spoken with a number of antitrust attorneys and legal experts, and everybody I've spoken with agrees this is a very strong case made by the Attorney General of Washington. Let me take a minute to highlight a few things that it says. So first of all, the Washington AG is very clear. Kroger and Albertsons control over half of the grocery sales in Washington state, and their merger would result in a monopoly, meaning higher prices and fewer choices for consumers. There's so much that I could point to in this lawsuit. I recommend that everybody read it if you have the opportunity to do so. One interesting thing I did want to call out, though, is that somehow the Washington AG was able to get internal company emails or other documents, communications, where company executives themselves were acknowledging that this merger would create a monopoly. So if you're Kroger or Albertsons, that's not good. There was a number of passages in the lawsuit that also talked directly about the proposed divestiture to CNS wholesale grocers. Like the concerns that we have been sharing, a number of people already on this call have shared our concerns. CNS Wholesale Grocers is just that. It's a wholesaler primarily. It has no track record. This is quoting a lawsuit, no track record of successfully running hundreds of grocery stores. It's not sufficiently established and sophisticated competitor to restore the competition that will be lost if Kroger's allowed to acquire Albertsons. This was a really strong part of the argument, and I've only touched on a few components of it right there. But let me take a quick step back. Why are we even talking about CNS Wholesale Grocers? Well, recall, Kroger currently has about 2,800 stores. Albertsons currently has 2,200 stores, so combined total of 5,000 stores. Even Kroger and Albertsons admit that is too many stores. That would be a clear monopoly. So what's their solution to that? They said, okay, well, we'll be a little bit smaller than that. We'll sell 413 stores to this company called CNS Wholesale Grocers, and that will resolve the monopoly effects of the merger. But we have serious doubts about CNS Wholesale Grocers' ability to operate those 413 stores. How many stores, retail stores, does CNS currently operate? 23. Where are they located? They're all located on the East Coast and the Midwest. They operate no stores in the Western United States. How many pharmacies do they operate? They operate one pharmacy at a Piggly Wiggly in Wisconsin. They don't have the experience required to operate a large regional chain of retail grocery stores. And for many of us who were around during the 2015 acquisition of Safeway by Albertsons, we recall what happened with the divestiture to Hagen. Hagen was going to also increase significantly in size, and it ultimately became the fastest bankruptcy in history. 6 months after the stores were transferred, Hagen declared bankruptcy. That's an experience we obviously don't want to repeat. So let me talk about the meetings with the companies, and Michael already spoke a little bit about the meeting with CNS. I think the companies have gotten the clear indication that it's not going well for them, and they probably should come and talk to us, right? Now, you might have thought they would have done that a year ago, but I guess it takes them a little while to come around to these things. So we did meet with Kroger and Albertsons on December 20th of last year and January 18th of this year. We met with CNS on January 11th of this year as well. Basically, the companies repeated their talking points. The merger is going to help them compete with companies like Walmart and Amazon. And they also said CNS is a strong company. Now, we had significant disagreement with that. And in particular, I want to point out that there were a number of members in the room who worked in the pharmacy of their stores. And in particular, the set of questions that those members were asking about CNS's ability to operate pharmacies in hundreds of stores, I think was very, very telling, and it exposed the reality that this company is not prepared at all to operate pharmacies and not even prepared to operate a grocery chain of this size. They did share that they have delayed their proposed merger timeline. It was supposed to be closing early in 2024. Now they're pushing it back as far as August of 2024. I would say as a result of these meetings, not much has changed. We remain as a coalition still strongly opposed to the merger and the divestment plan. There are simply too many unanswered questions, and the questions that we do have answers to, the answers aren't very good. I would say in particular, the members at those meetings who experienced the Hagen disaster made the most compelling testimony, and their questions, I think, were the most pointed. And again, the companies just did not have answers to those questions about Hagen. So I think the companies, again, they realize this. And so what have they done? They have hired an investment banker named Scott Moses to come out and explain to us and to everybody else why CNS Wholesale Grocers is nothing like Hagen, as he argues in this op-ed. Now, Scott Moses is a longtime financial advisor, investment banker in the sector, so he does have some credibility in this sector. However, this op-ed does not have a lot of credibility. It's got some serious problems in terms of the content of the arguments that he makes. But I gotta say, one of the biggest reasons why it lacks credibility is that Scott Moses was the financial advisor for Hagen in 2015 on the deal that he's saying now was so terrible. So not exactly the kind of advice or not exactly the kind of person that I want to take advice from on this current proposed transaction. Let me talk about some of the content problems with this op-ed and with CNS itself. So the reality is that CNS is a company that's currently going in the wrong direction. Over the last 6 years, it's lost significant customers and its sales are going down. In 2017, CNS had $27.7 billion in revenue. Last year in 2023, just $21.7 billion. But remember, this decline in sales was during a period of significant food price inflation. So as food was costing more, they were booking less and less revenue. That means on an inflation adjusted basis, the volume decline was even greater for CNS. A 21% decline in sales, but an over 40% decline in volume over this period of time. This decline in sales and the loss of customers is one of the primary reasons that the credit rating agency Moody's classifies CNS's debt as junk, speculative, non-investment grade status. Also, the thin margins, thin profit margins, high fixed costs, and declining credit metrics, like the amount of debt that they have relative to their profit, are all bad and declining. This is not the company with the so-called strong balance sheet that Kroger keeps talking about. Fortunately, Kathy Finn and Monique Hightower published an op-ed last week in Supermarket News, making all of these points and exposing Scott Moses for his previous role with Hagen. So again, we are not slowing down. We're going to continue to fight, but let me be very clear. I think we are winning the media battle here, and we're going to block this merger. Now, it's obviously going to be good for us. It's going to help us keep stores open and protect jobs, but I actually think it's also going to be good for these companies. Why? The reality is big mergers like this usually fail. In fact, according to research, 70% to 90% of mergers fail. Two of the primary reasons why this happens are the following. Number one, clashing organizational cultures. It's very difficult to take two organizations with very different cultures and blend them together into a functional company. Very well known in the industry that Kroger is a highly centralized, top-down company run out of Cincinnati, whereas Albertsons is a very decentralized company where regional managers have significant decision-making power. How they're going to try and get those two corporate cultures to mix together well is a major question, and obviously it would be a huge challenge for them to do it. The other problem is, as you grow in size, you also grow in complexity. Kroger already has significant challenges with things like its payroll system, MyTime, and it's got significant operational problems for the 2,800 stores that it already has. What would they do with 4,600 stores? Again, it would be very, very challenging for Kroger to do this. So people say, well, what about Albertsons? It may be fine. It's better for Kroger to not have to try and integrate Albertsons, but Albertsons needs to be sold, right? No. First of all, Albertsons is doing fine financially. They continue to be successful in terms of sales, profitability better than expected. They're doing just fine. The reality is the reason they were up for sale in the first place was never because they wanted to compete with Amazon or Walmart. The reason is they wanted somebody to come buy all of their shares. We've talked about this on several occasions in the past. If you look back a year ago, about 80%, between 70 and 80% of all of Albertsons shares were held by just 5 large shareholders, the private equity firm Cerberus and several real estate investment companies. When they tried to sell their shares, the stock plummeted because there were too many shares being dumped onto a small amount of shares held by public shareholders. Well, an interesting thing has happened over the past year. The majority of those inside shares have been sold. The biggest drop occurred after the $4 billion dividend was paid out at the beginning of 2023, about a year ago. So now, today, just 34% of Albertsons stock is held by these top 5 shareholders. The majority, the other 2/3 of the shares, are traded publicly on the New York Stock Exchange. If Albertsons and Cerberus want to exit their investment, they can easily do that without a merger. They can just sell their shares on the stock exchange. So again, the companies say this is about these big questions about the future of retail, about competition with non-traditional retailers. The reality is it's a choice. It's about whether you're going to invest more into the stores or whether you're going to send cash to Wall Street. And unfortunately, what they've been doing and what they want to continue to do is the latter, send cash to Wall Street. Take a look at the last 5 years of share repurchases and dividends. Albertsons, in that 5-year period, has spent $6.6 billion on share repurchases and dividends. Kroger, even more, $9.2 billion on repurchases and dividends for a combined total of $15.8 billion. That's money that didn't go to better staffing, that didn't go to security, that didn't go to fixing leaks in stores, that didn't go to all of the other problems that all of you on this call are very familiar with. But in fact, the biggest way that cash flows out of companies and out of the productive economy to Wall Street isn't share buybacks and dividends, it's mergers. When mergers happen, billions of dollars are paid out to shareholders. And the majority of the $24.6 billion share price that is associated with this merger would be cash that would be taken out of these companies and sent to Wall Street. That is the opposite of what these companies need to fix their problems. What are their problems? Well, the staffing issues are ones that you're all very well knowledgeable of. At Local 324 and Local 3000, we've been conducting some surveys, and we asked the question, how are staffing levels at your store? 5.2%, just 5% said your stores are well staffed. That right there tells you a lot. 20.8% said staffing is normal. So normal is whatever you expect normal to be, right? If you have low expectations, maybe understaffing is normal. But look at this. 74% of you said there's not enough staff in your store. Basically, 3/4 of you, not enough staff in your store. What are the consequences of that? Well, it's really interesting. If you were part of that 74% that said you don't feel that there's not enough staff at your store, you are much more likely to say that you feel unsafe at your store. Nearly 1/3 of you in that category said that you do not feel safe in your store, versus just 3.7% if you were part of that 25% that said that you had adequate staffing or staffing was normal. A huge difference in terms of safety as a result of staffing. What about theft? We hear about shrink, organized retail crime, all of these problems. And it's clearly a problem no matter what you think about the staffing level of your store, but look at the increased level of theft that's perceived among people whose stores are understaffed. 70% versus 46%. Again, staffing has huge implications, not just for the ability to stock the shelves, but in terms of safety, in terms of theft, in terms of a whole host of other issues. But let's talk about those other operational issues. People have sent me photos of problems as a result of understaffing, and you know them better than I do. I get these photos from you. Out of stocks, even when the product is in the store, there's just not enough staff to put it on the shelves. More out of stocks. This is a Food for Less in Southern California. Ralph's, a deli that's supposed to stay open until 9 o'clock, closed at 6 o'clock. Long lines at a Food for Less. Stock that's spoiling because there's not enough staff to work it on the shelves. Equipment that's old and broken. Pallet jacks that don't work. All of these problems are ones that you're familiar with and could be fixed if they took some of those billions of dollars and instead of sending it to Wall Street, bought more pallet jacks, fixed the stores, had adequate staffing. So to wrap it up, the proposed merger is the wrong way to go. It would mean more automation and self-checkout, more e-commerce and gig work, more digital advertising to higher income consumers, store closures go along with that. That's their strategy, and more cash to investors. What's the alternative? Investing in staff, investing in stores, more labor hours, safer stores, better customer service, better equipment, all of which would result in stronger sales. So what can you do? You can go to nogrocerymerger.com and find out how you can take action. And you can also send your own photos to me, my email address there, jmarshall@usw3000.org. I really appreciate your time tonight, and I look forward to the question and answer.
Thank you, John. I know that was very enlightening for everyone on this call tonight. But I do know that there are some questions and answers, and we're looking forward to answering them. You can put them in the Q&A, and we will read them out and call on you. If you want to raise your hand, you can do that as well, and we'll unmute you and let you speak. So I'm going to turn it over to Jenna to go through the questions and to recognize members.
Thanks, Andrea. We've had some questions in the chat that have been answered by some of the leaders, but I think some of these answers could be good for a lot of people. A lot of this information is that we are going to record the webinar, and we're going to post the recording on our website and social media. So you don't need to memorize all of John's slides right now. We'll have it available for you afterwards. And then the webinar will also be available both in English and Spanish afterwards. So let's get to some of the questions in the Q&A, and then I'll go to the people who have raised their hand. Is there any update on when the FTC is going to make a decision? The worst case scenario, if it does get passed, what would be our next steps as a union and as workers?
That's a great question. I'll jump in, and others can chime in as well. So two things. First of all, we expect the FTC to continue to seek answers to their questions from Kroger. Kroger, it appears, is trying to slow the process down at this point. They clearly don't want the FTC to sue to block the merger, and they're trying to do as much as they can to persuade the FTC that the merger is going to be okay. We don't think it's possible to do that. We think the FTC is going to see through Kroger's claims, and we do expect them eventually to block the merger whenever Kroger says that they're going to go ahead and try to do the merger. But again, Kroger is the one that's going slow now. The second part that's really important to keep in mind is state attorney generals have their own separate authority to enforce the antitrust laws of their states. That's what Washington State Attorney General Bob Ferguson did last week. That's what California Attorney General Rob Bonta could do at some point in the future. Phil Weiser in Colorado could do that himself in the future. We have the ability to make sure that every regulator who has authority over this part of the economy stops this deal from happening. And you're already seeing that start to happen.
Sorry, I've got a lot of questions going on right here. Can one of the leaders or John talk a little bit about the store sale to CNS? We have a bunch of questions on that issue. Or like when, do we know what stores they're planning to sell to CNS? Those.
That's a great question. Does one of the leaders want to talk about the company's responses to our question about that?
I'm happy to at least talk about my discussions with, this is Kim Cordova, president of Local 7 in Colorado and Wyoming. We actually met with Kroger and Albertsons representatives last week, and they refused again to provide us a list of stores. We only know what was published in the media earlier last year. But they would not give us the list of stores because they claim they are worried about workers being stressed out, even though this is stressing the workers out right now, seeing CNS and Kroger representatives in the stores. So we don't have a list. We do, at least part of our coalition, several of us will be meeting with CNS on Thursday, and we intend to ask them directly if they will give us a list of stores. So I don't believe anybody on this call has the actual list.
And I just want to add to that, that we have been requesting this list for over a year, or for about a year or so. And because the company has refused, we actually have the legal right to get the list, and we have filed charges with the federal government, and the federal government is going to be issuing a complaint against Kroger and Albertsons for failing to, or we believe they're going to be issuing a complaint in the very near future because of their refusal to give us this information that we're actually entitled to.
Can I just jump in for 1 minute? What Kim said is reliable. The only thing that I noticed at our store at one time, we got some kind of memorandum or letter from Kroger that was suggesting that some of the stores that they were trying to divest with was QFC stores.
Yeah, Sam, I can quickly chime in on that. You know, one of the things they did propose is with the sale of the stores to CNS, they would also sell several banner names, and one of them was the QFC banner. And so it's quite possible that a number of QFC stores would be part of that proposed divestiture to CNS. But again, you know, whether it's a QFC or a Fred Meyer or a Safeway or any other banner, we just don't think CNS has the ability to run them effectively. And it's going to be something that we're going to probably have to oppose.
Yeah, this is Sarah Charon. I just wanted to chime in and thank you, Sam, for saying that. I know there's a question about the Teamsters. If you go to nogrocerymerger.com too, you can see all of the organizations that have been supporting all of this coalition work that we've been doing, all these unions together, all the community organizations who also want to help stop the merger. Other labor unions from around the country have been chiming in to the FTC, encourage folks to go to that website. You can send a letter to the FTC. So yes, thank you for that. We work very closely with the Teamster local up here in Washington State. I know folks do as well around this coalition. So thanks for that question.
Yeah, I also wanted to chime in on the Teamster thing. Hi, Kathleen. Kathleen is a 770 member who asked the question about what CNS responded when we asked them about their relationship with the Teamsters. And I will say that their response was that, yeah, some Teamster locals don't like them and some Teamster locals do like them. So that was their response to our question. So they said, you know, this thing about them having a bad relationship with the Teamsters is blown out of proportion. This is from them, this is their perspective, because some Teamster locals like them. And I will also just say, we also asked them about their relationship with other UFCW locals. And interestingly enough, the person who is going to be the president of the CNS retail grocery division, if by chance they do get all these stores, is the same person who was the president of Stop and Shop during the huge Stop and Shop strike, which was the second biggest grocery strike in history, right after the Southern California strike. So he's the guy that basically caused there to be a strike in a huge strike in the New England area. So, and that's the guy that's going to be heading up CNS.
Kathy, I'm going to come back to you. The anonymous attendee has 7 days to stay, question mark. So what if everyone refused to go to the other company?
Great question. So one thing I do want to clarify is this is language that's in the Southern California agreement. So if you are not in Southern California, you would have to, talk to your own locals about what language you might have. But there is very specific language in the agreements in Southern California, both the Ralph's agreement or the Ralph's agreement, as well as the Vaughn's Albertsons agreement, that says that when a store is purchased by another company, the members have the right to, they have 7 days to make a decision whether they want to go with the purchasing company or they want to stay with their company and bump out of their store, use their seniority to bump. So we talked about this extensively, both in the meetings we had with Ralph's and Albertsons, as well as in the meeting with CNS. What would happen is what sort of Michael Bott was talking about. If all of the senior people decide to stay with Kroger, they will bump into their stores, and Kroger will end up with a lot of really senior employees and no new employees. So their labor costs will go up because they'll have all the senior employees, all the people at the top rate, and CNS will be left with really just junior employees, not a lot of department heads, not a lot of people with experience. And so for both companies, it would be a disaster. I would say at both meetings, John McPherson, the head of labor relations for all of Kroger, said, oh, that would be a disaster for everyone. And I said, yeah, I agree. It would be a disaster for everyone. That's why we're opposing the merger. And at the CNS meeting, same thing. The CNS folks said, oh, that would be terrible. Like they hadn't really thought about it. And they were like, well, we're going to have to figure out how to win these people over. And that's kind of when Michael Bott said, you can't win me over. Like, I know Michael didn't mention this exactly, but Michael was a Hagen person. He went to Hagen, he lost his job. He, fortunately was able to come back, but most people who had that experience are not going to take that chance again. So that is another reason why this merger would be a disaster if it went through.
There's a couple questions kind of on the same lines of things. We've been hearing rumors that Albertsons or Safeway is going to say that they're liquidate if the merger doesn't go through. There's another question about King Soopers doing the same thing, or if they're being sold to Walmart. Can someone talk about that?
I'll answer about King Soopers. King Soopers is one of Kroger's gems in their crown, and they're very successful. And there is absolutely no there has been any discussion regarding Kroger selling to Walmart. In terms of, maybe John, if you want to jump in on this too, in terms of Albertsons or Safeway just liquidating stores, I don't think that that's going to happen right now. I mean, they're making money. They're profitable right now. Like John said in his presentation, they're in a good position right now to actually continue to operate and thrive as a viable competitor in these markets around the country.
Hi, this is John with UFCW Local 5. The majority of our members involved with this coalition is Safeway folks in greater Northern California area. And I do want to kind of echo what Kim's saying there. Our members often refer to our area as the breadbasket of the company because it's been so profitable, the way they've converted the stores, invested the stores. They're doing quite well. They recently had their quarterly reports come out for financials, and they're doing well. I think it was a 2.9% increase over the previous year. This is not about the stores not being profitable. This is about corporate greed and transitioning money to a very small few people's pockets. The stores are doing well. You all are doing great jobs in those stores, and this is a valuable asset that they're trying to take as much cash out on as possible because it is doing so well.
So, I'm gonna unmute William. I know you've had your hand up for a while, so let me unmute you so you can ask your question. William, do you want to ask your question? We can also come back to you.
Well, William's on mute. He needs to unmute. So William, if you can find your mute button and unmute yourself.
Maybe while that's happening, I just to respond to the anonymous. Oh, is William? Oh, the anonymous attendee who wrote about the Hagen thing. I think that's really very poignant. I think a lot of us, that's on a lot of us. That's what a lot of us are thinking. Obviously, that's what the members we're hearing from the members. I think the Washington AG, that was a really big point in his lawsuit, and he presented, it's a big part of his case is, you know, what's that saying, like shame on us once or twice. That saying, I always get confused, but I think that's absolutely right. Like learning from what happened in the Hagen debacle, and making sure that doesn't happen again. I think that's a really good point. So thanks for pointing that out.
Vida Kuban, do you want to ask your question? Matt Lutton, down on the list, you're next. You want to ask your question?
Sure. Sorry, I just found the unmute button. I was thinking when for these, basically, would that be a good strategy to use? I think especially in Southern California, would we kind of, you know, use that to our advantage of, hey, all the senior people are going to go to Kroger, so that's going to bust up their payroll, and then, you know, the CNS company will get basically non-senior people. Is that a viable strategy to look at?
Right. Well, yeah, can I answer? Hi, Matt.
Hi.
Yeah, that's exactly, as Kathy said, what we told Kroger, and Albertsons when we met with them. And again, we told CNS, and both times, the executives tried to convince the local unions, well, we're gonna need your help. You're gonna have to work with us on this. And we told them whether the unions were going to work with them or not, the members aren't, because they've been through Hagen and they know what it means to go to the divested company. So we have stressed this point, and especially in Southern California, because our contract does allow transferring to another store to maintain seniority and not have to go to the divested store. So yes, it is a very important strategy, and Southern California is a big part of this. So I think without the ability to operate in Southern California, this merger probably falls apart.
Thank you very much.
Another question. Clara is a member at Food for Less in Sylmar from Local 770, and their contract is up in June 2024. Would it be best to or not to hold off on our negotiations?
Hey,
Nope.
hey, Clara, this is Kathy, of course, and Clara is actually one of our, or was a bargaining committee member in our last Food for Less negotiations, and super active. So we are in the process of preparing. We started more than 6 months ago, building up for these negotiations. I think that at this point, the merger could provide us some good leverage. So I think we should move forward, and obviously, depending on what happens, we will continuously be reassessing as to, our strength. As you know, we're building up to have high member participation and to be able to get strike ready by the expiration of the contract. And as we move forward, we need to constantly be reassessing whether, when is the right time to take action for maximum leverage, whether we need to, move immediately or, wait for a time in the future where we can potentially, join in coalition with others. So there's a lot of considerations, but at this point, we are moving forward to hopefully get, the best contract we can by expiration, but we will be reassessing, constantly. And you've been part of that process, and you will continue to be part of that process. You've been, I think, to every one of our leadership meetings. So, you're a great leader, and, your input and the input of your coworkers, and the leadership will continue to, assess what's best.
If the FTC doesn't block the merger, will a strike be an option for the union?
I think it depends on when, what happens at the timing of the news, when the contracts expire. Many of our contracts expire this year or early next year in 2025. This is Kim Cordova with Local 7. But it depends on what the timing, if this merger was to go through. While we are in the middle of the contract that's in effect, we cannot strike. But again, we start to expire at the beginning of 2025. So we'll advise the members of actions and things that we can do, in the event that the merger is approved.
And if I could add something, I just want to reiterate again what John Marshall said earlier. Yes, we're looking at the FTC to stop this merger, but we also know that the attorneys general in many of our states are taking a very active role to stop the merger in their states. And they're the states, Colorado, Washington, California, which are so critical to this merger, that if the attorneys general were to stop it regardless, I don't believe that the merger would have any ability to succeed.
If I may say one thing to the panel, everybody out there, and all the workers and everybody else listening on this webinar. First of all, some of the things they said and that alluded to if this merger goes through and then they take all the senior people, I can attest for this because number one, I've been at the same store for 33 years. And one thing that you can't get through a phone app or anything else is experience. I consider myself the ambassador of customer service, and that's important to retain customers. You take what the younger generation, and no offense at all to anyone of the younger generation, you leave a revolving door because a lot of them work when they want to work. And more of the senior people, you have priorities, you have commitment, and you're trying to provide stability in your job. So I just hope that everybody realizes that you take all your senior people out of a store, that store is not going to last. You need experience, and you can't teach experience.
One more question from the Q&A. Can we do informational pickets if we can't strike during contracts?
I think that depends on language of your contract, but we certainly have the right to hand out information to people. And I think there's also some, legal, different states have different laws about how much you can be in front of the right to be in front of a store, and, depending on the type of shopping center you're in, et cetera. So those are like very individual questions because some contracts may prohibit that and some may allow it.
Another question about if there is a change in administration federally, what would happen?
I mean, we talked about this in the morning meeting, and I think that, John Marshall had one kind of interpretation about, they're so far down the line already that probably it wouldn't make a difference. I have, a little bit of a concern that it might make a difference if, Biden appointed Lena Khan. If there was a different administration, I think it is possible you could get a different FTC chair that would not be as aggressive in pursuing this. Again, as Andrea said, we also have the attorney generals of all the states that are pursuing it. So we have a lot of, like irons in the fire. So I think, you know, the FTC is only one of those. So, you know, whether a different, you know, federal administration would make a difference, I think, you know, there's a small possibility that it would, but most likely would not make a big difference at this point.
I know Jeff Parent, you've had your hand up for a little bit too. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question? Nope. Going down the list, Ivan Orozco, do you want to answer your or ask your question?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So there, so I overheard some of our assistant store director and store director having the conversation about the emails that they had discovered. Knowing how much damage it would do to the merger prospects, both of them not being fans of the previous mergers, especially the ones for Albertsons and Safeway. One of them, I'm not sure how bad this would be for everybody, but in my opinion, I do believe that it would be the lesser of two evils. But her idea is just breaking up the stores and breaking up all the stores back to their original brandings, like Safeway going back to being Safeway and Albertsons going back to just being Albertsons. I'm done.
I'll take a stab at that one. This is John, President Local 5. So I think that's a lot with the Safeway and Albertsons companies is what they were trying to put out early on of why we needed to have the merger go through. Part of that relates, I think, to the slide that John Marshall showed earlier, showing that in the time of the acquisition, you had, I think, 79, 80% owned by 5 shareholders. And so they've been trying to basically convince folks, especially in our stores, that if they don't sell to or have this merger go through, they're going to sell to somebody, and you better be careful who we're going to sell it to. I think that's why a lot of, I won't say a lot of, that's why it's so significant to show the change in the stock ownership, that there actually is another path to go forward. They could, they could sell it off, right? All of us with Safeway were bought by Albertsons not too long ago. So, I mean, it's possible to sell the chain. That's different than a merger. But we also have good contracts to represent any new owners coming in with those contracts in my area. So it's always a possibility. But right now, that's really the company campaign of trying to convince people to get behind the mergers, because it's the boogeyman that's out there that everyone should be afraid of. But the reality is this is really about acquiring more money to less people's pockets, and the company's doing quite well on their own.
Kim, did you have something you wanted to address before we close?
I do. There were some comments or questions about workers making a decision to quit right now. We think that's a big mistake. As we've stated that it does look like at least we have some attorneys general that will, at least in Washington, that's moving to block, has already sued to block the merger. We believe the FTC will follow suit. It's too soon to make that decision. There'll be an opportunity for us to do effects bargaining. And so I wouldn't quit right now. You would lose your seniority and everything. And right now you're covered under good union contracts. And, we'd ask that everybody stay the course and that, you help work with us to help block the merger. But we really don't want to see anybody quit right now. There's no reason to. It's way too soon in this process. So please stand strong with us, and we're fighting really hard. I'm really proud of this coalition, and we're working really, doing a good job pushing these government entities into blocking the merger. So our work isn't done yet, but please hang in there with us.
Thanks, everyone. We're a little bit over time, and so I just wanted to address that you can ask your questions. We have an email. It's nogrocerymerger@gmail.com. I'm putting it in the chat right now. And then Andrea, do you want to do a little bit closing?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to wrap up. Thank you all for participating tonight, for the great questions and for your attention. I think, watching John Marshall's slides, we all understand that this is just a power grab, a money grab. So we will be offering the presentation through our website. If anybody wasn't able to get on the call this morning or this evening, they'll be able to see John Marshall's slides and presentation. I would urge you to share that with your sisters and brothers and siblings in your stores. And again, thank you. We will keep you updated over the next several months as more news happens. Have a good evening.